So we've been talking about Babylon here. Was down the bottom. Babylon is more centrally placed on the Euphrates. The Kassites and the Hittites came from the north, and the Assyrians came from what corresponds very much to the modern state of Syria. And they invaded across from about 900 BC. And interestingly, their capital wasn't based here in the part of the world they came from, but they made their capital in Nineveh, here on the Tigris, and south of it Nimrud. And if you go downstairs, you may have seen those enormous Assyrian bas-reliefs, sort of next door to the Egyptian gallery. This is where they come from. They come from Nineveh and Nimrud, and they date to the same sort of period that I'm talking about now. What I want to show you comes from Nineveh. It's the last thing we've got time for, and it's in the display cabinet at the end of the room on the right. This is a very small fragment of a very important and very large library that was found in the middle of the 19th century in Nineveh, and it was fragmented when it was found. Many of the pieces are broken, and they were broken in antiquity, and over the years scholars have been piecing them together and reading them. The library was assembled by a most interesting man. His name was Ashurbanipal. He was one of the most powerful and important kings of the Assyrian Empire. And all the kings of that period were great warriors, but in addition to being a great warrior, he was also literate, and he was a scholar. It was very unusual for a king to be literate and a scholar in those distant days, and it's pretty unusual these days as well, but it was very unusual in those days. And what he did was he got his scribes to translate and to transcribe many tablets from all over Mesopotamia in many different languages, and they were almost all put into Assyrian. And he became an assembly, if you like, of world knowledge, covering every possible sphere of human activity: mathematics, history, geometry, medicine, history, religion, the whole lot. One of the clay tablets in this collection is the third. I showed you the little clay tablet when we started early on. Then we had the Standard of Ur, which was also one of the objects in the history of the world, and 100 objects. And the top left-hand tablet there is the third one. And it looks exactly the same as all the others, but I assure you it's very special. And the reason is that clay tablet is one of 12. They were found together, and the 12 tablets recount the Ballad of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is one of the great stories of antiquity, like Homer. It's one of the really important stories. It had been known about for a long time, but the The problem was that the story of Gilgamesh had only been found in very fragmentary forms, tiny little bits of it, emerging in very small broken fragments of these tablets. Then suddenly we have the whole 12 all together recounting the whole story, and you can go today to the local bookshop and buy yourself a translation of the Ballad of Gilgamesh, and that's where it comes from, most of it. This particular tablet tells the part of the story right towards the end where Gilgamesh, I don't know if you've ever read the Ballad of Gilgamesh, but it's about a young king who is seeking immortality, and along the way he acquires strength and wisdom and courage, all the things you're going to need to be a great king, and he does, and it's that sort of story. Here he meets a man called Utnapishtim, and Utnapishtim is already an immortal. He's already able to converse with God, and God tells Utnapishtim in the story that he's displeased with mankind. Not because mankind's wicked or anything of that sort, too noisy, that was the problem. And he commands Utnapishtim to build a great boat, and in it he should put his wife and his children, and two each of his sheep and his ducks and his cows. I think you can see where this story is going, can't you? It's the story of the flood. And interestingly, the story of the flood is very much in the tradition of Mesopotamia. The story is retold at many times in their history. There's a tablet over the other side there, which is about 1,000 years older than this one. And there's a slight variation in the story, but it's quite definitely the same story of the flood. And indeed, there was a television program made about it not very long ago, you may have seen. And there have been other versions of the flood mythology, if you will, that has been retold many times in Mesopotamia. Now, in this version, Utnapishtim builds his great boat, the rains come, the boat lifts off, everybody's drowned, except for him and his family and his animals on the great boat. And at a certain point, he releases ravens, not doves, but ravens. And they fly around, but there's nowhere for them to land, so they come back to the boat. But eventually, the rain stops, the water subsides, the boat comes down onto the land again. Everybody gets off, hopefully much quieter after that. And that's the story of Utnapishtim in the Ballad of Gilgamesh, and the story of the Great Flood. So why is the tablet so important? Why was it picked out in this history of the world in the 100 objects? Well, there are two reasons. First, it does provide, almost in its entirety, an account of the Ballad of Gilgamesh. And it is, as I say, one of the great stories of antiquity. But it has another real value, which is it shows how even in those days, or perhaps particularly in those days, the mythology, the stories, the traditions, if you will, of one religion are just picked up, moved across, and plopped down somewhere else. Because the story is retold in many religious traditions.
Autobiography of King Ashurbanipal. Autobiography of King Ashurbanipal. This text is memorized Ashurbanipal's life and education as crown prince up to the day of his coronation. He describes how he was able to read and understand the